Educating Geeks, the podcast where friends help friends discover new passions. I'm geek host Allison. In the studio today we have
Megan,
Sarah,
and we have guest host
Devon,
who joined us last for Sleepy Hollow.
Yes,
Welcome
I did.
back.
Thank you.
Yay, Devon's back.
welcome back.
So we're going to be covering season 4. Actually, we already covered seasons 1 through 3 in our very first podcast ever. And in case you haven't seen enough spoiler alerts, we talk about the season in depth. So pretty much anything Fringe seasons 1 through 4 is going to be free game. So if you haven't watched it and you don't want spoilers, make sure you stop now and go back and do that. So generally we like to talk about what the show is all about.
Wait, so who are we educating?
We're continuing my education from the first show, and I'm not waiting to watch season 5, just FYI.
I've already started for the 5th season again.
It's an ongoing television show. So there are 22 episodes, so obviously I'm not going to cover the plot of every single 22 episodes. But I would say the overarching, I would love to get your guys' opinion as well. There's the whole Peter arc, Peter coming back, Peter trying to get back to his own timeline and then not. And then there's the sort of the shapeshifters, the new shapeshifters, where did they come from, who's in control of them, and then sort of the nefarious arc that's a part of. So for me, those were the two big story arcs covered. Do you guys agree? Do you have other ones that you would want to mention?
The love story.
I find it funny that you say the love story, because for me there are many love stories, although they seem to all involve Olivia, but there's more than one for me. You're talking about Peter and Olivia, of course.
Peter and Olivia.
I agree with Sarah. Peter and Olivia's love story. The fans online who ship those two characters call that relationship Olive Eater.
I know. I saw that too.
Oh.
Which is just, if you think about it.
It's very awesome.
It's, it goes places.
The longer you think about that, like, the more your brain works on it. Peter, oh my God.
But I do agree that the other two arcs are Peter trying to get home and that relationship between the Prime and the parallel universes. And then also what you said about the shapeshifters and who we discover who's ultimately in charge by the end.
Right. That nefarious plot that's at work.
I'm glad that they were able to do that because it never really made sense. Why are all these weird things happening? I don't think that they specifically said David Robert Jones was responsible for all of the Fringe stuff that they originally got together to investigate. And then he just kind of disappeared when he got split in half between the two universes. And I was just kind of like, what just happened? How did all of this stuff leave Massive Dynamics? Is Nina behind it? What's going on? And then he came back and I was like, oh, that makes more sense. That's why this stuff was happening. And that's why it kind of dropped off after he died. And they explained to me why they went off into the direction more of the parallel universe relationship rather than the Fringe events.
So you're talking about all of the Fringe events through all the way leading up to in season, which season is it that it gets? It's season 2 that it gets cut in half, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And they've already started with the relationship between the two worlds, and it's less Fringe event of the week and more into the whole arc.
So are you talking about by season 3?
Whenever he dies. I don't know when he dies.
I think he died in season 2 because we just rewatched season 3.
And I don't remember.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
didn't
either.
happen in season 3.
Yeah, I mean, I still got the sense of, having it work very much like the X-Files, where there's, Monster of the Week versus Cancer Man, and here it's, Fringe event of the week, Fringe event procedural versus mythology. And I didn't sense that for me personally. I didn't really key into that. So.
You didn't think there was any Monsters of the Week in the season?
No, I do think there were Fringe event CSI-like episodes, but I didn't necessarily think more or less that there were more or less for me personally.
Well, I felt like they tied more into the overarching story than they had earlier in the show.
Does anyone know when they knew they were ending? Did they not know they were ending until...
They thought they were going to get canceled between seasons 2 and 3, I believe it. No, it was between seasons 3 and 4, and then they got picked up for season 4, and I think they were kind of on the verge with season 5, but then they managed to pull out season 5. Because between seasons 3 and 4, fans actually did like a letter writing campaign, and they sent in boxes of red vines to the studio. And Joshua Jackson said that basically saved the show. And I didn't even realize that people were doing that, because I probably would have joined in. Partway
through this season is when they were really worried that by the end of 4 they were going to be cut. And there were 1 or 2 episodes early on in the season where their numbers dropped below 2 million, and they were really worried about it. And I have some theories about what they did later in the season based on those numbers.
Well, that's why I always wonder if they're upping their game in terms of telling overall story arc, because they're like, oh crap, we might be ending, so we better pick up our pace if they want to be able to close it up nicely, as opposed to leaving people hanging because they just ran out of time to tell their story.
And I thought that was interesting because one of the things that we wanted to discuss today was how season 4 in some ways almost resets Fringe.
Yeah, that's basically was my question, because Megan actually pointed out that there's a lot more product placement.
Way more.
And it almost feels like a reboot season to me. The whole way they set it up sort of reboots Peter and Olivia's romance, right? The love story, as Sarah calls it. So it just kind of almost felt like a reboot to me in many ways.
And even their personalities, obviously the people who had, everybody except for Peter, who had been shaped by Peter's life, or as in Nina's case, Walter was a different person because Peter wasn't there, and then she kind of stepped in more after the Cortexiphan trials when Olivia and her sister's mom died. She's a totally different person. Everybody's personalities reset basically, except possibly Broyles.
To me, it's funny that you say that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Broyles doesn't seem very different to me in any of his alternate formats, whether it's Blue Universe or Orange Universe, or Blue Universe, Orange Universe put forward, which is, I guess, what they call Orange Universe. He seems basically the same to me in every single one.
Okay, let's talk about those colors for a minute.
Yeah.
I remember whenever I watched the first 3 seasons, and I watched the first 3 seasons or 3.5 seasons when they were on. And at that time, I remember very distinctly the color changes. But I felt like by 4, they were using other sorts of imagery to shift between parallel and prime. For example, the color of the Statue of Liberty, or the
Zeppelins.
The Zeppelins, or the Twin Towers.
Or how they spell Manhattan.
Yes, how they spelled Manhattan.
I didn't even catch that.
No.
As a former English teacher, I caught that and I was like, wait, what's going on? And when I looked it up, I said, okay, this is one of our, what did we call it? Bumpers? What did you call it?
They're called bumpers.
Bumpers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I never noticed the color changes. I have a terrible eye for stuff like that, which is why I find Devon's visual artistry so compelling, because he's just so good at that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm seeing stuff I've never seen before. But I can't pick it up on my own. So I was using the visual, like the things, like the Statue of Liberty and the Twin Towers and the Zeppelins as my cues. And Olivia's red hair. Mm-hmm. Those were, and Walter's hair even too. The physical objects were my cues.
Yeah, so the most overt thing that they do is the opening sequence. So seasons 1 and 2... it's blue. They actually change, there's like the words that float around in that opening sequence. They actually change those words every season, regardless of what color the opening is. Season 3, they went back and forth between blue and red. And then there's one episode where they're moving back and forth between both of the universes pretty regularly in that episode. So if you watch that opening, it actually strobes back and forth between blue and red.
So season 3 was the season where mostly every other episode was the other universe.
Yeah, it was more, there was a lot going on in the alternate universe, and that was the red one. And then season 4 is all taking place in the orange universe, which is this rebooted prime, after Peter has turned on the machine.
Although there are a couple of episodes that take place in the time forward shifted.
There's
but
one
on the other
episode.
side. I thought there were 2.
There's one episode that takes place in the future, which the Fringepedia calls the oppression opening.
Oh, I thought that was the future.
Yeah.
So it's the future because Peter, when he's pulled everyone together, there's the one episode.
You're talking about the gray universe from season 3.
So then when Peter starts to come back, it's all picking up right after he's pulled everyone together. Okay, so then there's the gray where Olivia gets it in the head the first time.
Yeah, and that's actually the end of season 3.
Right, in that you meet their daughter for the first time.
No,
that's in 4. That's in
So who's the young Fringe agent then at the end of 3?
That's Ella, her niece.
Oh, her niece. Okay, gotcha.
Oh.
And the thing with Ella, is even more confusing because Peter and Olivia's daughter is named Henrietta, and people call her Etta. So there's Etta and Ella.
I was
Whoa.
confused by that too when grown-up Ella showed up. I was like, is that did they name their daughter after the niece?
Yeah, they didn't do a very good job of making that overt. There's like one throwaway line that if you're like looking at your phone, you would totally miss it, where she says something about, "Oh, it's my niece."
I missed that. I completely missed that. When was the first time that Etta showed up?
It was that episode at the tail end of season 4.
No, I'm not talking about adult. I'm talking about as the child in the park with her parents.
Oh.
When is that?
I think that they just flashed to the park, and that developed over the course of the season, and it wasn't until just little bits were revealed. There's a park, they're happy, and then there's a child, and that wasn't until very late in the season.
Yeah, and I don't think they go back. I don't think you actually see Etta in the park until season 5.
Okay.
No, you do.
You do?
Yeah, because I haven't really gotten into 5 yet, and I don't think it was until they revealed, do you recognize me? Well, how would I? Oh my gosh, you're Etta. You're my daughter.
Right.
I think that's when...
They play with it a little bit in the dream sequences between both Peter and Olivia throughout the season as they build that arc, as they come back together as a couple. They do go to the park a little bit, but
I don't think
not
Etta is
completely.
there.
No, just the two of them
think
laying in
it's
the
just the
grass.
park.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Nice segue yet again, Devon. Let's talk about the love story.
The love story.
So I do have a question about the season sort of starting without Peter, because one of the things I read online, although it didn't bother me at all, was that fans were really not particularly a fan of having Peter be absent from the show at the very beginning. And I also read an article where they interviewed the cast, and the cast was equally not really happy about how they started season 4. But me personally, it just didn't bother me at all.
I think
I missed him. I wanted him back.
I wanted him back too, and we got him back. But I think that one of the things the producers were trying to do was strip back down to the bare bones of what made this series originally great. And it was the play between this bare bones cast of people, this ensemble, and just kind of trying to get back to the roots. They knew that within 3 episodes, Peter would be back. But as we said, there was already questions by the beginning of the season. How much longer will this show go? So that kind of started their reboot whenever they had the pilot of season 4.
Well, and going back to people not liking Peter not being there, A, I wanted him there because I love him. But B, because everything had been reset, all of the characters had different personalities. And I think part of what made people miss Peter, and I think it was really well written and really well acted, is that all of the characters were like just angrier with one another. Like in that very first episode of season 3, like they're all really short with one another. Even Walter and Astrid they seemed like they were just setting each other on edge constantly.
I didn't get that.
No, I was like, we got to get Peter in here to calm everybody down. And
they did kind of touch on that overtly with Olivia in her interactions bringing Lincoln onto the team, and she's like, none of this bothers me. And then she went to Nina and she's like, what's wrong with me that none of this bothers me? And she just talks about being self-sufficient and not having anybody to rely on but herself growing up. And then she softens as she regains her original Olivia memories, and her relationship with Peter finally gets to come to fruition. And I think that is just beautiful character development. And I think that overall, with the absence of Peter, that those of us who are very attached to him had some feelings about his absence. But in terms of the story, it played out very well. It was executed very well.
But were you okay with her essentially acquiescing to the other set of memories and giving up who she felt she was in that version of herself?
No, I wasn't. I wanted them to be together, and I liked how they turned out, but it was still very like Disney. I'm going to give up my voice for true love. I'm going to give up my fins for, every horrible like woman giving up of herself.
But it really bothered me too, because there were a lot of times Olivia says at least once, and I feel like maybe it was alluded to more frequently, she's a better version of me.
Yeah, she
which
says
really
that.
bothered me.
She says that a lot. Yeah. And every version of Olivia has said that about every version of Olivia. I
don't
feel
think-
like
I don't feel
no,
like
faux
Olivia
Olivia doesn't
hasn't.
say that.
No.
You're right, because
She
she's
would
more
never say
confident.
that.
She'd never say
Never
that.
say
She's too confident.
I
But
love for Olivia, actually.
original Prime Universe Olivia says that about Olivia.
I don't like Olivia.
I like for Olivia.
I like Olivia. And
I-
then
I love
Orange
Olivia,
Prime
actually.
Universe Olivia says that about Olivia and about original Prime Universe Olivia. It's really strange. Anyway, you don't like Olivia.
I don't like Anna Torv.
Oh, really?
I don't.
I love her.
I love her too, actually.
I don't. She can't emote with her face.
I disagree.
I watch her and
I
her face
disagree.
is just frozen. I think whenever she is full Olivia, she just tries too hard.
I have the same problem with her that I have with I think her name is Mary McDonnell, President Roslyn
Yeah, Mary
in
McDonnell.
BSG, where
Yes.
it looks to me like she's smiling, and then I think, is that a grimace? Because she just sounded really angry. Is she one of those people that smiles when she is gonna to butter people up or because she's really uncomfortable when she's talking about something really negative? And it made me feel like I
She's
have
a politician.
I think they just both have bitchy resting face.
no, it's not that. It was her grimace, and I was able to recognize okay, she thinks she's making a grimacy face while she's acting, but she's not. It's the same face as her smile, and it made. I was looking up.
Yeah, you were looking up various conditions, medical, psychological conditions.
Yeah, there's a thing within people on the autism spectrum where they can't recognize what a facial feature means. You know, a smile looks the same as a frown, looks the same as an expressionless face. And I felt like I had that. And then there's also a neurological, separate from autism, disorder that has brain damage to a certain part of your brain.
So you have that for Anna Torv.
I have that for Anna Torv and Mary McDonnell, where I just can't tell what the fuck they're trying to do with their faces.
Well, I mean, for me, I know you and I talked about this, that we just don't agree. But I did start, after you had posted that on Facebook, I did start looking. And for Anna Torv, I thought that she plays Olivia as this person who's really tamping down her emotions 98% of the time.
When you go into the alternate universe, the parallel universe, where everybody is a lot more jovial and a lot more upbeat, I felt like I didn't have the same negative reaction to Anna Torv as much as I couldn't stand Olivia. I just wanted her to stop bouncing, and I wanted Anna Torv to stop making it look like, oh, I'm Olivia right now, so I need to be bouncing.
Yes, I completely agree.
I feel like she
couldn't stop moving.
Just and I know people like that, and that's not how they don't stop moving. It was just not very well executed at all.
That's
totally
funny. I
disagree.
totally disagree as well.
I love all those things about
her,
Olivia.
yeah, me
She's
too.
a bouncier person. She smiles more. She's got this little, sly little grin that she pulls out the
does
side
that
of her
thing with her
face.
feet.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I thought that was
And it's
fantastically
interesting,
done.
because I watched the interviews with John Noble and Anna Torv, and they actually talked about just that thing, and they actually complimented each other on how well they did physical changes to their characterizations for their alternate versions of themselves.
It was noticeable. I even I could tell even without the wig who she was playing. It was distinct. I will give her that.
I thought it was hyperbolized. I thought that her motions, her mannerisms were over the top, overacting.
Yeah.
That just bothered me.
I completely
I
disagree.
disagree.
John
as well.
Noble, definitely. I could tell, just even from the tone of his voice, everything about him, he was just fantastically
person.
executed between
Yeah,
the different
I find that
characters, and even
fascinating.
between
Yeah.
the two versions of, Prime Universe Walter. I could tell. Just it was very well done, but it just Olivia bugged
I
me.
totally disagree. I think it was subtly done, fantastically done. Season 3, I think, is where you see a lot more of the subtlety that Anna Torv can bring to her acting. But I just totally disagree.
Yeah, me as well. It's this side of the table against that side of the table, I guess.
I think one
Throw
of
down.
I think one of the prime parallel relationships with yourself, kind of sticking with this topic, that I found most fascinating was
Astrid.
Parallel Astrid.
I love Astrid.
And Prime Astro.
Yes. I totally agree. I think that's a fantastic... I love that pairing. And the episode in season 4 where you see both of the Astrids come together is one of my favorite episodes of the whole series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely one of mine too. And we had kind of talked about it in the in our original Fringe podcast where Alice was a little bit worried about Jessica Nicole just kind of getting stuck as the plucky black assistant. And we were like, no, we promise. She has more stuff to do later.
The thing of it is what'd you call her? Astro?
The Prime is Astro.
It's Astro.
Astro.
Because there's no one to mess up her name in the parallel universe.
Yes. Later in the show in season 4, she goes out in the field.
In the Prime universe, the reset Prime universe?
Correct.
Okay.
With a camera. Right. And a microphone. And for me, she's just now the roaming plucky black assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not all she does. That's not all she does in the whole season. Like, she comes into her own, I feel like, in the 4th season. She still has to try and control Walter, which nobody can do. But, she's speaking up for herself more. She has a couple of scenes where it's just her and Broyles. She gets shot trying to protect Walter. Like she's going out into the field. She's doing more. She's growing. She has a whole episode just with her and the other Astrid. You get to know her so much more in this season. I still think they could have given her way more to do.
Right. So I'm not saying that altogether she remains the plucky black assistant and has no growth. I'm just saying that it didn't solve the problem for me completely. And you guys were like, oh no, it's all going to change. And I was like, it changed a little bit for me, but it wasn't huge.
She's still kind of reacting to Walter, but in a different way, or reacting to the alternate universe of herself, or the alternate version of herself. She doesn't really, I can see where you're coming from, where she doesn't really stand on her own.
But I do enjoy her character, and I do like the actress. I think she does an awesome job.
I do like that of the people who go into the future in the letters of transit, where they get frozen in the future, the one where we jump way far into the future. Oh, yeah. She's one of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, so we know that she's important, and we know that we're keeping her around.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, I disliked that episode for some reason. I loved it for some reasons, but I really hate that. Why is it that when people are bad, they go to whorehouses? Like, why did that have to be the scene? Why did the observers, right? So there's the scene where they're in basically a brothel, and I'm like, really? Could we do something different with that? I really would like something different.
See, that's my very, very favorite episode of the entire season.
When you go to the oppression universe.
When we go jump into the future, where the observers have taken over Earth. I don't remember the year, like 2039 or something.
Yeah.
I loved that. I loved it. I loved everything about it.
It was not my favorite. It was not my favorite is the one where the wife has the Alzheimer's. Those that you leave behind or something like that. That was probably my favorite.
That one
That's a good
because
episode.
It was the female that was the one making the groundbreaking discoveries, and the wife and the husband was the caretaker and like, look at this thing I did for you.
And I found that episode, as well as some of the other love episodes, were just there to show various characteristics of Peter and Olivia as their relationship develops through the whole season.
There's a point for me at which all of these, there's this real tool, technique that they use in the series where whatever these two characters who like to repress their feelings, be it Olivia or Peter or Walter or whoever, whatever action is happening in the Fringe event of the week, in the words being said by the people participating in the Fringe event of the week, are really expressing what the other characters are really wanting to say to each other, or
Agreed.
you assume are wanting to say to each other. And
that's definitely happening in that episode. It happens in a couple other episodes, like the one with the pheromones. And then there was another episode about love as well. But in all of those, it seems like they were kind of mirroring what Peter and Olivia were kind of experiencing on the side.
Am I mixing 3 and 4, the episode where the guy who just wants to be seen?
That's season 4.
That is season 4.
That's
so
one of my
that's
favorite episodes, actually. I really liked that performance.
I love how we disagree with these things.
I know, it's awesome, right? We all get to be...
There were a couple episodes, and I even emailed Alice about this. I said, is there anything I can skip?
I think I said 13 and 14.
No, you got to watch them all so that we can disagree about which ones are good or not.
I definitely like 13 and 14, so I'm
And
glad
which
I
one
watched them.
Were those?
A Better Human Being and The End of All Things.
Oh, I think I said 12 and 13. A Better
12
Human
and
Being
13.
and Welcome to Westerfield. Though.
Oh, you can't skip Welcome to Westfield.
The two good things about Welcome to Westerfield are, one, it explains how the universes can come together, so we know what Jones is doing, and two, Olivia kisses Peter in the end and acts like she's his Olivia. Those are the only two redeeming qualities of that episode.
Although I do like that that Peter was very much like, no, you're not mine, and
Finally.
I'm separating myself. Yeah, I did enjoy that aspect of Peter.
The whole thing, since I was, when we said, well, okay, we're going to do a Fringe episode, another one, I started to watch the season that we were supposed to be watching, and then I was like, wait a second, who's that? I'm just completely lost in context. So I went back a season. I'm like, I'm still really lost. Oh, and then this happens, and that's my favorite thing. So I think I'm just going to start from the beginning. So I'm kind of conflating all of these, but but I'm also noticing trends, and Peter's affections just kind of went on everybody but Astrid, because in the first season there was like this brief flirtation with Olivia's sister.
Yes.
And then with full Olivia, like everybody but Olivia. And then when he finally has her, he's like, oh, I don't know if you're her. I don't think you're her. And then when he meets Henrietta, like after he's like, I know you're my Olivia. Finally, you're my Olivia. He doesn't recognize his own daughter. Like he just is not very good at recognizing people or placing his affections in the correct place.
Well, think about when he meets his daughter. First of all, it's off scene, and he just got out of Amber after 20 years, and a couple minutes later, he goes over to talk to her, and she's kind of like crying.
She's being cagey.
And then all of a sudden, he's like, oh, it's you. You know, I mean, I don't think he really had a chance
look at baby
to not
pictures
see
of
her.
you and say, those are Devon's eyes. I would recognize that baby as...
But if you were in like an alternate universe way in the future, and I was way older and I was a baby, then maybe not.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I would recognize you.
Good.
Yeah, but then how is the audience going to know if he doesn't stand in front of her and say, "You're my daughter"?
Yeah.
That's true.
There are elements that you have
Yes.
to remember the media that you're dealing with here. Like when somebody's typing and they have to, speak
When you have
what's
to have
being
Scully
typed.
narrating.
Yes, exactly.
When we do these podcasts, we always rewatch whatever it is if we're not the person being educated. So having seen all of these episodes before, when Etta shows up in that episode, I started freaking out because I'm like, oh, there she is, and I'd forgotten she existed. I forgot about her. I mean, I remember a couple episodes before that, whenever September talks to Peter about Henry. And so when she showed up, I'm like, wait, how's this work? And then later, it kind of all fell together for me.
So you really like September was
I
one
love
of your
September.
favorite
Love
characters.
September is
Really
such a
love
great
the
character.
Michael
something.
Cerveris.
Yeah.
Michael Severus.
I
Yeah.
don't think I'm saying that right. Does anyone know him from anything else? I certainly don't.
No.
I don't know him from anything else. I think he's my favorite character of the series, not necessarily the season.
Even the season. Wow. Well, for me in this season, it's Lincoln, and there can't be enough Lincoln.
Both of them or prime or
All of the
parallel? All of them?
Lincolns.
Speaking of Lincoln,
We told you.
All of the Lincolns.
I love how he ends up with Olivia in the end. He's like, I think I know where home is, because we were talking about home, because September uses that same line with Peter later.
You need to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't actually love all of that, but I did with Olivia deciding to loosen up, because she starts by flirting with and starting something with Lincoln, and then starts to
Poor Lincoln.
go through the change.
I think the only reason she ended up having any interest in Lincoln is because Astro kind of like, hey, what about this guy?
He
Yeah,
likes
the
you.
beginning.
Yeah,
She kind of sets that seed in Olivia, so she's like, well, maybe. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really her only impetus for that. Something I just realized, when we talk about Peter, and I know you talked about Peter in the first podcast that you did, and I know for some of us, we really like that character, and we really like how he's acted, as well as how he's just a genuine guy, but he's also a really strong male figure in the show. And given his name means The Rock, and that he's in kind of the power of the machine, I just thought that was fascinating and probably done because of that. That's probably why he was named that.
Oh, get that they named the character Peter.
For sure. You really see that at the beginning of season 3 when you miss him.
Season 4.
Season 4, thank you. When he's missing.
So did they name Olivia that so that she could be Olivia and Walter so that he could be Walternate?
Alternate.
There's no telling. I mean, we don't know how far in
know.
advance they had all that stuff mapped out, but
Yeah.
I don't know, but there are things that are definitely in later seasons that they definitely mapped out early. And there are things that happened early that they actually brought back, like the porcupine guy on the airplane.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. Does that episode occur in every single season?
I thought it was
With
only
the
Just
airplane?
the first season
Yeah.
and the fourth
Fourth
season.
It doesn't happen in the second season?
twice.
They don't revisit it?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm always interested. That's why I always like to
you
try and
sure?
find when they talk to the writers and things like that, because I do find for shows that go on for a very long time, how much of it they plan out in advance and how much of it they see what's working and where the characters are going, and then they work to tie it all back in, because it's not like the previous stuff goes away. So they can always go back and pull from it and wrap it into a new season or in a new direction.
I think that's one of the reasons that they did the letter to transit episode where they jump so far into the future towards the end of this season, was to kind of say to the powers that be, this is where we want to go with this. This is where the future is. Give us a little bit more time and we'll get you closer to that ultimate goal.
It felt like a backdoor pilot to
Yeah.
me. It totally threw me off.
I agree with Devon. Like, I definitely feel, and I agree with you, it feels like a backdoor pilot. Like, they really were like, look, we just want to get one more season out of this show, because I think they went in planning on doing like 5 seasons.
Yes, I read online that this episode 19 it is, they did that on purpose. They did it because they were kind of trying to beg the powers that be to let them keep going. And so they did it very intentionally, kind of hedge their bets to keep the show alive.
Dollhouse did a very similar thing, and those two, oppressed future episodes ended up being the only good ones.
Well, and then they got that second season and they just crammed everything into the last season. It was really disappointing, but that's a different show.
Yes. I will say that toward the end, although I really did enjoy like the last 4 episodes, I would say quite a lot, there is a certain amount of, I don't know the right word, hokiness. I don't know, that of Olivia's powers that really just, I was just sort of like meh about. Like, I was like, I don't really feel like this is needed. I think I would still be invested and love the show without these elements.
Well, and even though, as much as I love the fact that Olivia and Peter finally end up together and they work so well and they complement each other in those ways that they do, it still bugged me that she couldn't realize her full powers without him. And then he didn't really do anything. And so I'm really conflicted about that. I'm, an American woman, and I grow up on like, love will conquer all, and you define yourself by the love that you're in. But I'm also, like a feminist, and so we're independent and we can, and self-sufficient. So I have a hard time. I fight with that, with both of those. Loving the love story and hating her reliance on him for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys can't obviously spoil season 5 for me, which I will be watching. I'm not going to wait 2 years to watch it. Because is it really clear why Peter's so special, even up till now? I mean, like, we know for Olivia, it's the Cortexiphan, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly. But do we know why it is that Peter has the power to run the machine and all of this kind of stuff? We do. So what? So is it? So we know by now. So then tell me, because I don't think I know.
Walter builds the machine around Peter's biology. He builds the machine, so the only thing that can control the machine is Peter himself.
Yeah, but so I can. So then did they somehow program Olivia early on to just be able to react to whatever Peter's biology is that also helps him run the machine? Like, why is he? What is it about Peter, other than her emotional attachment to him? Is it?
Maybe she's just dead inside.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
To me, I think Peter becomes important because of what has happened so far in the show. So what we know is that Walter discovers a way to cross over to the universes. He goes over there, he takes Peter, he brings him back. And I think it's that act of bringing him back that makes him important, because it causes the observers, it causes September in particular to become kind of obsessed with what's happening with this group of people. He takes action and saves Peter in one version of the timeline. And then when he doesn't save Peter and lets him die, everyone still has, because it's happened in one version of the universe, everyone still feels him and wants him around because it's happened at some point. So the fact that Walter messed with the timeline, September messed with the timeline, to me, caused him to be important.
No, because the reason that September had to intervene at Raiden Lake was because he showed up to observe Walternate. No.
It was Walternate.
No.
Yeah, it was Walternate.
Because
yes. Oh, yeah, you're right. Because it was Walternate who originally found the cure, but
he missed it.
And September, like he noticed September distracted him, and then the cure was like turned from like red to blue or whatever, and so Walternate thought it didn't work.
And Walter was watching it happen from his universe,
and
he had already lost his Peter, and so then he crossed over.
Okay.
Because he knew how to make the cure happen.
So Peter was already special before September intervened. We don't really know what made that discovery of the cure
to me
important enough.
No,
he's like Hawkeye.
But September shows up to watch Walternate find the cure because of the significance of that point in history.
Yeah.
So September shows up, screws it up, then our Walter, Prime Walter, fixes it, and then September saves
Peter,
parallel Peter, at the lake.
Because he's destined for this other stuff. So
he is significant in the beginning, because even throughout the entire series, they always say the observers show up at significant points in history. September shows up when they are saving Peter, so Peter must be significant before this all occurs.
But we don't know why.
And
it seems like kind of a recursive thing where, like, who were the first people? Oh, we're the first people. Which just doesn't explain anything.
I like that part, though. that the first people was Walter. But I want to say one thing about what you said about Peter and Olivia real quickly before we get too far from it, about how they complement each other, but then it bothers you. But I like that because Peter had the control over the machine, and the power to run the machine was Olivia. So together they're more significant and stronger than they are not as a couple.
So that's what he brought to it. It wasn't just like his presence that
I think they balanced each other. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you, Devon.
Okay, I can see that.
In terms of the other relationships, we get to see sort of Walternate, and I love that line that Peter says to Prime Walter, because he discovers that Walternate isn't the man he thought he was, and then he says to Walter, "But you're exactly the man I thought you were." Mm-hmm. And at first Walter is sort of like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And Peter's like, that's a very good thing. And I kind of liked that. Actually, throughout the whole season, I liked you assume Walternate is this really just evil bad dude, and then you discover he's not so bad. And then there's the whole, 27,000 Ninas, and are they good or are they bad?
Yes,
and it's like
Ninas.
Changing all the time. And oh my God.
That got out of hand.
I can't keep them straight. But I was enjoying not knowing if she was good or bad, and that it wasn't clear.
I love
and Broyles too, where I thought he was a shapeshifter.
I think they wrote it to make you think that.
Well, it worked because I totally thought he was a shapeshifter.
The first time I watched this episode, alternate Broyles, who essentially is working for Jones, for a time, I completely missed the whole fact that the whole reason he was doing it was to save Christopher, his son. I completely missed that until I rewatched the season. And I know you guys touched on this before, but there's a lot in this show that deals with the relationships between fathers and son. Mm-hmm. And we see that over and over again with Peter and Walter. But then you also see it here between Christopher and his father Broyles. And I'm glad that one, Broyles was not a shapeshifter.
Yeah,
and two, that he turned himself in and apologized in the end.
Because he's an awesome guy. God, I love Broyles, and I love that episode where you see him with Christopher. Like, could I just get like a whole show? Like, let's just do a Broyles family TV show, because I would watch the crap out of that.
I like comparing that to the season 3 episode with Christopher.
That's a great episode too.
What I thought was it, because again, Broyles is one of those person who he's like, you know, he is got
Steadfast.
it, yes, steadfast, and you really see him being genuinely happy and sweet with his son.
I thought it was interesting that he turned himself in to himself.
Well, duh. I mean, come on. If you're going to turn yourself in, who's the one person you're going to turn yourself into? The one person who's going to be like, oh, yeah, I totally get it.
But I don't know if he turned himself in. I don't know if he went there to turn himself in. I think he may have not. I wanted to turn himself in, and when he got there and he was there with himself, he's kind of like, uh-oh, the jig's up. I'm going to turn myself in.
No.
I totally got the impression he was like, nope, I can't do this
he did it
anymore.
on purpose.
Because Prime Broyles would have had to come up from Boston to New York to where the bridge is.
Well, and they give you that speech where he's talking to Walter and says, would you do it all over again? And there's that discussion, which leads to one of the, I think, major themes that carries throughout at least the 4 seasons I've seen thus far is, what would you sacrifice the world to save your loved one? Mm-hmm. Right? And to me, it was that conversation that he has with Walter that makes him go, right? Really gives you a good definition between the difference between Walter and Broyles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who's like, no, I'm doing the wrong thing. Sacrificing the whole world for my son is not the right choice here.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go turn myself in. But I think it was intentional.
What would you guys do if you met your alternates?
I think I'd have that conversation that Lincoln had with himself. Like, okay, so I grew up here. Like, where I would want to trace the path and figure out where they diverged. Like, I'd be totally obsessed with that. That's exactly what I'd be doing.
Alice?
I don't know. I'm not, just like you're not good at the, if you had to choose your top something, I'm not good because I always want to think that I would do this really interesting, fascinating thing. But then I think, well, that's just me having a whole bunch of hubris. And no, I'd probably be completely freaked out and being like, what the F is going on? And I'm so confused, versus, being really funny and clever. Like, I'd take myself out to see my favorite movie or whatever, So those are really hard questions for me. I think
Devon?
I'd stare a lot.
I would want to switch places, try something new.
Pull a Parent Trap.
Yeah.
I would do exactly what Lincoln did too, and it bugged the crap out of me that nobody did it sooner than that episode, because that's exactly that's the first thing I would do. We would hang out all the time, and we would love each other or hate each other.
Okay,
I would just want to know which one it would be.
Well, it makes the most sense for him to have done that, because the Olivias don't want to have anything to do with each other because of how that all went down.
But why did that go down in the first place? I would never do that to myself. Like,
Well, but if you've been raised to be convinced that other universe is literally destroying yours and you don't know anything about it except for the fact that those people over there are out to destroy you, and you had no context for who they were as people, I could totally see how that would happen.
In the alternate universe, they're not just the FBI. They're Department of Defense. They're military people.
Yeah.
They've been brought up with a military time. And I love that scene when Lincoln comes over and he's like, why are they thanking me? And she's like, I know it's not like that in your universe, but we're heroes over here. Like, this is like a big deal. It's not secret.
I like how the Prime Universe Fringe division starts to move towards what the parallel has become.
Yes.
Towards like at the very end of the finale when they're like, we're going to give you more funding and welcome General
Broyles.
Right.
Yeah. For sure.
if there were another universe, do you think the public should have that information?
No. And they played with that early on. It's one of the best episodes, One Night in October, where they have the serial killer and they bring the serial killer professor over to find himself.
Episode.
And it's an awesome episode, but it asks you that question about what if we all know. And I love how they ended it with short-term amnesia, and so that's a great episode. But we also see it a little bit whenever Astrid asks Astro about their father.
Yeah.
And Astrid's father died of cancer, but Astro's father's alive.
And nice.
And a nice guy.
And she
Yeah.
lies to her.
She
and
lies to herself.
I'm glad that she was weirded out when she called Astrid sweetie. She was like weirded out. Like, why did I call her sweetie? Like she sensed that like she's the nurturing type. She's used to taking care of Walter, and then she like kind of assumes that role with the parallel version of herself, and then she gets weirded out by it. But then in the end, she's kind of still continues with that by lying to her about her father.
Yeah, but I don't know if I think she totally did the right thing in that situation, I think.
Yeah.
Although I asked Sarah this when I watched the episode. I said, do you think that Astrid would go to see her father in the Prime world? And you said that you thought that she wouldn't if she knew that he was alive.
You asked if that was her intention, if that was Astro's motivation.
Astrid's motivation. Astro's the one here.
Yeah, for lying about her father.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So to prevent her from going and seeing for herself what Prime Astrid's dad was like.
So I would say when I started watching again, every time the closing music started playing, I was just like, oh my God, I love this. It's so awesome. But I would have to say the music during the show really didn't impact me at all. Just the opening and the closing for me. And Devon's looking really excited, but you're more of a music guy than I am. So what were some of the things that really stood out for you?
Well, at the end of the show, as the ending music starts up, I suddenly have the bad robot thing go through my head.
I did too. Bad robot.
And I miss that. But and I don't really have a lot to say about the music, but the one thing that was really exciting for me is a band that Sarah and I enjoy called the Airborne Toxic Event was actually played on the radio in the car during one of the scenes.
Oh, really?
That's so awesome. You guys, so which episode? Do you remember?
It was early in the season and was during episode 8, and the song was called Changing.
I just remember, I should text Devon about this, but my phone was nowhere near me.
And I was like, I should tell Sarah about this, but we don't talk about this stuff until it's podcast time.
So, Fran, how about you? You're kind of a music person too. Did anything call out to you?
Well, the music on the bumpers really stands out. All those violins.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure that's really fun to play. I used to play the violin. Yeah, I think it's really well done. I think it does a good job of blending into the show and moving, pushing your emotions the way that they want you to.
Without being really obvious.
Without being overt. It doesn't feel manipulative.
Right.
Like sometimes if the music is not done right, it can feel like you're being manipulated. I think it's a great score. But yeah, it doesn't ever really jump out at me too much.
So there was somebody on the internet had sent around this thing that was which Fringe character are you? Yeah. And all 4 of us took it. I think we should all just say what character we ended up being. I was Astrid.
So was I.
Yay.
I was Walter, and when I told Alice, she was like, I knew it! And I want to know why.
I was kind of surprised that I didn't get Walter, but when I got Astrid, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes total sense.
I didn't know who I would get. I feel like I picked some of the more kind of kick you in the face, careless answers to some of the questions. I like taking these quizzes. I think they're fun. And so when I took it, I didn't know which characters would be options for, who were in the pool to end up being.
Sure.
And I got Olivia. And I was like, that's interesting. But I didn't have the characteristics. I didn't keep those. And so today I retook the quiz, answered, I thought, the same answers. And I got Peter.
Well, I never know, the algorithm by which they use. And the questions are, if you've taken those internet quizzes, it's not like it's a Myers-Briggs, it's like, if you were looking at a field, what flower would you be kind of questions,
Yes.
And you've only got certain options. So the reason why, Sarah, why I assumed you would get Walter is because, one, you're just generally a quirky personality and you're very unique. And I think in the way that you enjoy having that personality and that you really view yourself that way. And in the answering of questions, that would come out. And that's why I assumed you would get Walter.
I when you said you got Astrid, that it made sense because you're a very compassion-driven person. I didn't predict it, but I was like, oh yeah, I can see how that is. And Astrid's kind of a caretaker, and Alice is kind of the caretaker, like project manager-y type.
Yeah, no, I thought, oh, well, that's because I'm a plucky black assistant. That's why I got Astrid. Well, you guys, thanks so much for continuing my education on Fringe in the studio. It's been me, Alice.
Megan.
Sarah.
And Devon.
Thank you, Devon. So you can find us at educatinggeeks.com, which is our hashtag is Educating Geeks. And we're on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Google+. Next Wednesday, the Fringe Geek Supplies will come out. And if you're not familiar with that feature, one of the geek hosts will hand pick items that will help you flaunt your love of all things Fringe. You can listen to the podcast straight on the website, or you can do it through Stitcher or iTunes or even SoundCloud. If you do listen through one of those media, please take the time to leave us a review, give us a comment, give us a thumbs up, because we really do enjoy hearing from you. We'd like to take the time to thank Ashley Kay, who communicates with us on Facebook all the time. She's been a fan of ours for a while now, and she just recently shared her love of Dragon Ball Z with us. So thank you, Ashley. We will continue to look forward to hearing from you. And we'd also like to make a shout out to Tony S., one of the ministers of podcasting, who's been a longtime supporter of the podcast. Thank you, Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Yay.
And Ashley K.
Indeed. So we'd like to let everyone know that we're going to be recording live at the Comic Media Expo coming up on October 17th through the 19th. Our panel is scheduled for Saturday at 5:30. We're going to post that up on the website so you can find it. We're going to be talking about the Guild. So if you're coming to that, please take the time to come and join us and be live in our audience. That you will join us for our next podcast, where we will be celebrating Terminator's 30th anniversary.
Wow, that's
I
a long
know,
time.
right? It makes me feel old. How about you, Devon?
I'm already old.
Me too. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.